Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Austin Ritzel, Directory of Advisory and Communications for 17 Asset Management, and I have what is really an extraordinary pleasure of introducing a truly amazing man, Dr. Leon Caldwell. Dr. Caldwell is an award-winning leading expert on education, public health, and social entrepreneurship with a diverse background that encapsulates really the three tenets of holistic real estate development: health, wealth, and wellness. As the founder of Ujima Developers, he recognizes that he and his peers have a unique capacity to change community outcomes. He thus sees real estate projects as much more than inert structures. Dr. Caldwell is an advocate of community transformation rather than gentrification. Transformation changes the form of a community in a way in which everyone can benefit. To learn more about how to deploy real estate as a means of transforming communities, I am proud to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Leon Caldwell. Doctor.
Thank you, Austin. Thanks for the introduction. It's indeed a pleasure to have this opportunity to represent the Growth Collective in Philadelphia. It's also a pleasure to represent the work that I think many developers who've been historically marginalized from the space, what the real work they're trying to do, which is a community transformation. I'd be remiss not to also thank my family, particularly my mother, Elsie Caldwell, from West Philly. And we have spent a lot of time kind of talking about and thinking through what does it mean for communities to transform, and that's changing its form. How do you redesign communities that have been historically marginalized or disinvested? And these are like really important questions that, I don't want to get too academic or heady about it, but today's talk in our brief moment is really intended to inspire you with provocation, right? And what that means is that there's an optimism I have about Philadelphia and really about this work in general. There's an optimism that we have the opportunity to change, the opportunity to think differently, to do differently, with the tools we have. And that one tool that we're all here for is called real estate. There's a particular set of individuals in Philadelphia I really want to, before I start, just say thank you as being supporters of my work. The East Parkside community, Viola Street community, Viola Street block, actually. There's several individuals who I hope are here listening. The Reinvestment Fund, PIDC, Fells Foundation, particularly Sarah Martinez, the Barra Foundation, the Cyber Foundation, Merchants Foundation, Valentine Foundation. These are all really taking a stance of using philanthropy as investors. And this is not just in terms of giving, but really as investors in Black-led community mobilizations. I think there's a real opportunity we have, not just in Philadelphia, but in several other places. And that opportunity is to start to reimagine, which is an often overused phrase, but also redesign what neighborhoods are. And that redesign also takes the professionals in that space to rethink their role. And this is where I bring this lens to this idea of being in a space where this profession of real estate development, which I've come to rather late, and I would, I dare say to some extent, I'm not a trained real estate developer. I am more of a social scientist, a psychologist with an economics background who understand the role of this profession, the role of real estate in changing the game or changing the narrative about communities. A couple of years ago, I wrote a paper titled, looking at the role of real estate developers as public health officials. And when I wrote it, I thought about this idea of the power of being a developer, right? Like, and what does that actually mean, a developer in itself? But the power of naming what goes on a block, right? Or what goes in a community. And many of you see this now in your projects. It's the difference between having a vape shop and a place that makes smoothies. It's the difference between having, a high sodium restaurant that serves only things that literally kills people versus investing or having as a tenant a place where the food is medicine. So there's so many aspects of the work that we do, and not just building high-rise buildings or mid-rise buildings or affordable housing, all those kind of things that are in the field. But our work is more than just the built environment, right? And so I think about just my company's, the way we think about our work, it is people, place, and progress. Because we truly believe that without thinking about how people will use the built environment, the place isn't sustainable for progress. And you see that in many cases where people just build and they don't come, or they build and they come and they don't come for long. And so part of what I'm hoping in this opportunity for this time that we have is to put some concepts out there about what is holistic equitable development, and then then walk you through a project and how I've kind of implemented the conceptual framework that I've created. We use a lot of words in our profession, or any profession really. It's filled with jargon, right? And if you're not kind of clear, sometimes you end up using words and phrases and jargons that you forgot what they actually mean. And that's happened quite a few times where you're in meetings, I'm sure, and someone would blurt out an acronym, and that acronym means 10 different things. I mean, just think about the acronym we use for organizations. Well, one of the, I think, important parts of what I'd hope to do in this inspiration with provocation is inspire you to think about what does it really mean to say holistic equitable development. We've talked about equitable development. What does holistic mean? What does it mean to say social impact, right? I remember listening once, I think it was Greg Heller who said this, that like all projects have impact. And I was like, that's actually true. They do have an impact. The minute you start moving dirt, right, you've had an impact on the environment. Well, there's something about thinking through this work and being intentional before you actually start digging, or before you, during your design phase, or even conceptual phase, like how will this impact the people? And the people not just being the tenants, right? The people not just being on the commercial side, the commercial tenants, or the residential side who lives there, but what's around them. This is where the holistic piece comes in. And I wanted to make sure that, in this opportunity we have to discuss these really important topics, that this work is embodied in much of the work that the Growth Collective members are doing, whether it's Jacob Roller or Mosaic, Kyle, West Powelton, there, Anthony Miles project in North Philly, or there's just so much work that we are collectively trying to do. And this work does nothing but, or does more than just build building, but it stops way short of just saying we've gotten a project out there, right? It is really, how do we transform communities? Like, how do we let voices in places where voices have not been? And there's some realities. And this is like, just to be clear, I'm not a nonprofit developer. I'm a for-profit developer. And that's with great intention, because as we all know, this is part of the wealth creation story for even my family. But it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, right? It doesn't have to be if I'm doing well, other people can't do well. I often talk, with a good friend of mine, Suleiman Rahman, and we talk about this idea of doing well and doing good. Work that we've kind of created, and it's all throughout different pockets of Philly. And this work is really about how does everyone kind of lift, right? And I'll tell you this, and this is kind of one of the kind of provocative things I like to say, is Philly and any city, right, will not reach its full potential, will not have a growth strategy if equity is not part of the conversation. If it's not framed with it and with equity as part of it, it will not grow and be sustainable, right? It will have its limits, it will be capped. And just think about this. Like, if you're only using a certain part of your economy, or only a real small part of your economy, then you're not engaging the full breadth of your economy. So when you limit yourself, in many ways, you're limiting your growth potential. And that's happening in Philadelphia. That's happening in cities all over the country, where certain segments are not part of the economic fabric, or they're really funneled into one part of the economic fabric. So a growth strategy has to have an equity framework. And think about this from your own projects. And there's a lot we can say about what that means in terms of what a growth strategy is, who develops the growth strategy, who's growing in the growth strategy. These are all things that require, I think, deeper conversation more than the 30 minutes that we have today. Another kind of provocative thing I'd like to say before we get into just a description of a project is that real estate is a tool, right? It is either a tool for liberation or a tool for mass destruction, right? And that's what I think we are not putting the profession or the task of being a developer or looking at the role of real estate in a community or in a city as a tool, right? It's some people think it as a job, as a thing, but it either liberates people, right, or liberates the inhabitants of a geographic area to either thrive, do better, or it destroys their opportunity structure, right? Whether they're being displaced, removed, whatever the mechanism is. Well, we should start thinking about that as we approach a project. How are we using our tools? And that tool can be one of which people's health are benefiting, or one of which their health is actually not benefiting, right? Where do we put waste? How do we think about sustainability and climate? These are all important things that energy efficiency, all those things, stormwater management, these are all parts of our conversations that we are in a space to really think differently about, because we have so much more data. And the data is telling us really important things, right? Just heard this morning or last night is an AP report that's saying the water levels in our country in the next 30 years, water will rise at a clip that was 100 years before. Right? So let's think about what that does to our rivers. We saw that in Philadelphia this winter or summer or fall, whenever it was. And we increasingly see the Schuylkill go through its crests and ebbs and flows, and what it destroys, right? And the ripple effect of that on insurance rates, on supply chain, on materials, on waste. Like, these are real things that are happening, and they're happening to people, not just our businesses. So I want to actually just remind us that this thing that we're entrusted in, this profession we're taking on, is one of which is a tool, right? And how we use our tool. And I would say that some of those who have been like classically trained in real estate, they only see tool in one way. And that's I think I have the benefit of having not been classically trained as a real estate developer, that I see this tool in multiple ways. Like a screwdriver can be used for much more than just screwing, right? A screwdriver can be used, or many of our tools in our toolbox have multiple uses. But if you're only trained to use them one way, then that's the only way you'll use them, right? It takes someone outside of that oftentimes traditional training to think about, well, how do I use this tool differently? And because of my background, as having a public health background, of having a background in education and philanthropy, there's multiple ways in which we can see how to use this tool differently. The other thing I'd like to offer us is that, the role of a developer, it really is as a public health official of some sort, right? And I say that not to, expect people to get an MBA and an MPH, but I do want to submit to you that the impact that developers have on a community is not just in affordable housing or lower rents or market rates or some of. We actually do impact how people live, how they experience the built environment. And having said that, there are projects in Philadelphia and all over the country that are taking on this idea that the built environment should be one that edifies people's health, right? It should be a place where it's not just about air quality or walkability or those really important things. I think about some of AARP's work in the livable communities, that and how we live across multiple generations. It's really about how do people experience the space and experience each other in the space. I mean, this is for those of you who have kind of a social work or psychology or events around urban planning. This is really important. These are really important concepts, but they're not just for us in that field. The developers need to have that orientation as well, and in some partnership with those who are thinking that way, because ultimately what we build, what we're financed to build, will impact how a community, how a city, how a region grows economically, how it grows in terms of its health, and all those things are interconnected. Much of the work that I've been doing are just basically connecting dots. The dots that most folks don't connect. And I think it's important that we have these interdisciplinary conversations so we do connect dots, and we connect dots in ways that will make all of our businesses more profitable. It would also make all of our business more sustainable. And ultimately, it's going to grow a country, it's going to grow a community, it's going to grow a city in ways in which have sustainability. And these are really important concepts that I know we have the opportunity to do this. I know we can do this. I'm excited and proud to be part of the Growth Collective and be partnered with 17 Asset Management, because these are the type of conversations that should be happening, because cities are changing. People are changing. We're seeing this every day. We're seeing this in weather patterns. We're seeing this in the context of so many aspects of how our country and our communities are growing in profound ways. And we're hoping that this moment, this day, is not the end of a conversation, but the beginning of a conversation. So I'm going to ask Austin or Dylan to go to the slides, and just want to, for the last 10 minutes, kind of go through a project and move from concept to kind of application. So I, a few years ago, when I moved back to the East Coast, I was on faculty at University of California, Irvine, and I really kind of started thinking about how people live in California as a whole. Southern California in particular is a whole nother beast. And then I moved to Lincoln, Nebraska, and don't ask, but it was a great job at the University of Nebraska. I was actually tenured there in the Teachers College, and that's where I actually I built my first house. And then I realized, having grown up in a row house in West Philly, that building houses is actually kind of fun. Designing them is actually pretty fun. And then I just got bit by the bug at that point. That was in 1999, and ever since then I've been doing projects. Whether it's design or I built my second house in Memphis when I was on faculty at the University of Memphis. And there's so much excitement that I have around just the thought of taking just dirt and plain, I'm sorry, if you're from either of those places that are agriculture rich, you don't call it dirt, you call it soil. So if you're from the city, we say dirt, but what I learned is if you're from a rural place, you actually use the word soil. So you move soil, and then you put something that you call a home, right, or a building. And that really inspired me to think about, one, what a blessing that is. I have some gratitude into that. But two, how challenging, but also how easy it is, right? And what it takes to do that. And I thought about this in, the context of moving back to Maryland or to the East Coast, and realizing that those expansive places that I had lived previously, I grew up in a row house, right? And much of what I saw in design and what I saw in communities, or thinking about communities, that wasn't really reflective of how do you redesign, an urban space or neighborhood. So that got me on a whole nother plane of what does it look like to redesign a neighborhood I grew up in into a place where everyone could thrive. What needs to be in it? So this holistic, equitable development is basically an assemblage. Just taking about 4 or 5 years to assemble, 3 different projects within one, and that it's a beast. Some people think I'm a little nuts, but I also think that go big or go home. And so what you see on the map is 3 sites in the East Parkside neighborhood. I've been really fortunate, and also I grew up on 42nd and Parkside to the 2nd grade, so it's basically coming home. And what I found there are people in that neighborhood who love their neighborhood. And this is not just East Park, this is all around Philly. And what you have are people who don't understand communities or neighborhoods, but see the bottom line, basically interceding, whatever the word is, into communities and disrespecting the people and their intent in those communities. This project was one where we were trying to really have an alternative to gentrification and really think about what does transformation actually mean. So let me go to the next slide, please. So there's some key elements to, what does it mean to have holistic, equitable development? First of all, we define what holistic means is investing in projects that have two strategies. One is health and well-being. Basically, if you're not well, you can't work. So we think about wellness in a different way. And the other is economic mobility. This is really critical because as you see the projects that we have, these projects are basically strategies in a neighborhood. They're not just programs, if you will, but these are built environment strategies to produce health and well-being and economic mobility. So we have one project, which is the Steamy Workspace. And Steamy Workspace is we're building a makerspace. That makerspace is a STEM-focused makerspace. Steamy is a kind of a word that I trademarked, which is STEM. We added the A for arts. The M is actually squared for math and manufacturing. The I is innovation, and the E is for entrepreneurship. What we really wanted to have is a place-based strategy where people are coming into communities in their own community and essentially preparing for the future of work around STEM. That alone creates a space where the economics, the financial availability, and the talent is cultivated to participate fully in Philadelphia's growing economy around life sciences, around shipbuilding, all these things happening around the Navy. We need a talent pool, right? And people keep saying we need talent, we need talent. We have to cultivate talent. Talent just doesn't like come out of thin air. Talent is cultivated. And we see very little strategies, and I'm not saying none, but there's very few strategies that are place-based in Philadelphia that creates opportunities for people to engage in the beginning of kind of careers, if you will. The part where we think we will make, I think, big strides also is strategies that promote kind of health and well-being. We are currently working on a project. It's a fully funded project that is building what we're calling Thrive Village. Thrive Village is a food and health destination. And that project is, again, in this one neighborhood. That project will have a doctor's office with Thrive Medical. This is a group of Black doctors who've made the conscious decision to basically rent space in this to be part of the community, if you will. And we have a Thrive Cafe, which is also part of this. And Thrive Cafe is really exciting because it will be the kind of the flagship of how do you build or cultivate talent within the community in a co-op way. We hope to attract those who've been formerly incarcerated, seniors in the neighborhood, as well as youth, to really build something that is a true community space. And then our third project, which combines both health and well-being, is the, I should mention too, Thrive is a mixed-use building. A big feature of that Thrive is to build what I'm calling this porch concept. You know, those who grew up in Philly know how important porches are. And that porch concept is essentially a food court truck or a food truck court where we want to curate the food trucks and have only healthy food trucks there and access to food. So we talk about food insecurity. There's many ways to solve that problem. We just keep thinking everybody wants a Whole Foods or something similar. You don't actually necessarily need a Whole Foods to have food. So we try to debunk the myth that we're waiting for Superman to come in the form of a supermarket. So the last thing I'll add is the final part of this project, which is Ujima Village. And Ujima Village is a multi-generational housing opportunity. which will have condos and rental property or rentals for seniors. It's a age-friendly project. I did a project within the community across certain parts of Philly and AARP. And that project is looking at how do you redesign a row house for aging in place. And so we're excited about how all these things hold together in a holistic way, that communities are, folks in this neighborhood are building a mixed income community that has the opportunity to meet people's needs. And finally, I'll say, because I know my time is dwindling, this idea of real estate is being positioned as a social change, right? A mechanism or serves a function of social change. And my inspiration or want to inspire other developers to think of this role and to think of real estate development and moving Philly forward or any city forward is our jobs or our products that we put out there can solve problems in communities. And sometimes that problem is thinking of the future. And so my want for all of us in this space, my want in all of this of us who are in love and believe in communities, whether it's Philly or wherever, is to ask the question, how does my project, how does my investments, right, not only make me wealthy or contribute to my wealth, how do they actually solve a problem or a challenge and position the future of this neighborhood into a place where everyone can thrive? So that's that's my inspirational provocation, is for us to rethink who we are in this space as developers. Again, I'm extremely excited to be part of the Growth Collective in Philadelphia, and I actually see this as the future, hopefully, of real estate development. And Thrive is located at 40th and Girard, right at the across from the School of the Future. So thank you so much for your time. I know I think Austin is really keeping this virtual community on task, and I'm sure there's questions or opportunities to discuss in the chat, and hopefully we can keep the conversation going.